My father introduced me, and now it's my son's turn. Woodworking is a passion we'll share forever. Woodcraft understands that. Their people know the right tool for the job, and they make sure we understand how to use it. Their help? It means a lot. Woodcraft knows how we feel because they feel the same way. You know, I enjoy sharing my secrets, and now Jake's teaching me some things too. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Tight Bond Wood Glues, the pro's advantage.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of I Can Do That. I'm your host, Chad Stanton, and today's project is this mudroom locker. Now, I was talking with my buddy who does a lot of new home construction, and he said this is the one thing that every new homeowner wants, is a locker for their kids. So let's take a look at a couple of features on it. Now, a lot of the lockers that I've seen will have a seat that lifts up to put storage stuff inside of it. But I figure that'll collect a lot of dirt and dust. So we're going to have ours open, and you can just put a basket or a box of some sort down there for the kids' stuff. Then coming into the middle area here, we have this decorative beadboard, just to give it a little bit of different color added to it. And we have these curves on the sides. Now the curves, although they look nice, they actually do serve a purpose. If I was to sit down on this, well, now I have a little bit of extra elbow room for when I got to tie my shoe or put on a scarf. We also have the hooks where they can hang up all their coats and hats, and the open part up here for some additional storage. Now you'll notice on the top here that my crown molding or trim, it doesn't return down the side. Well, the reason for that is, if I want to build multiple of these, I can butt them right up to each other and make as many as I want, a whole wall of them. But if you're only going to build one or two, you can return your trim all the way around. Okay, let's get this out and get our materials in, and we're going to start building. The first thing I have here is the seat. Now the seat is solid wood. In this case it's oak. And I've got them in the clamps glued up because we're going to need to cut this down later. So let me set this aside to dry. And the next thing we're going to be working on are the sides. The sides are some 3/4 inch plywood, and I've already cross-cut and ripped them the length from the plans included at the end of this video. Now I have both of the sides here at the same time. And the sides, you'll notice, have some curves on them. We have two convex curves at the top and bottom, and we have a concave curve in the middle. So let me show you how we're going to lay those out. Now the one at the bottom is 6 inches, and I've measured in 1 inch, and I need to make that curve. Now I could set my compass at 6 inches and do it, but this compass isn't big enough for that. So I have these trammel points. Now these trammel points I can adjust anywhere on this piece of wood. And these were actually made for a yardstick. However, I didn't have one laying around, so I just grabbed some scrap wood. And I've set it for that 6 inches. Okay, fairly simple. But let's take a look at the one at the top here. The one at the top is a little bit different. Again, I'm coming in 1 inch, but then I have 3 inches the one direction and 4 inches the other direction. Now if I was to set my compass at 3 inches, well, it would come up short, and vice versa. If I set it at 4, it would come up long. How do I find the exact middle for that? There's a real easy way to do it. At the ends of where the curve will be, imagine a straight line going across this. On that straight line then, you're going to set your compass so it's wider than the middle. It doesn't matter exactly what this distance is, just so it goes past the middle of where that line would be. Now at the point at the end here, I'm going to make an arc, and then I'm going to move this to the other end. Again, make an arc. That X is the center of all this. So now I can put my compass on here, and look at that, the setting's perfect. There's our curve. Okay, now to make the concave curve, well, I'm going to get a nail and a thin strip of wood, and I'll show you how I do that next. I've placed 2 nails at the ends of where those curves are, and I'm ready to make that concave curve. Now I have a few layout lines on here. What they are is, this line is the top of the seat, and this line is the bottom of that upper storage unit. And so the distance between them is just a hair over 50 inches. And so I found the middle, so 25. Now from there, from the back of the locker, I came forward 9 inches. Now you can change those measurements if you want to change your arc. And so by placing a thin strip of wood against the nails, I'm just going to push the strip until I come to that 9-inch mark, and then with a pencil, draw my line. Now all these curves I'm going to cut out with the jigsaw, and I'm going to clamp both of these pieces together so when I cut it they'll be exactly the same. Well, at least that's what I hope. Let's see how I do. Okay, because I used the jigsaw to cut this, I want to make sure that I get it flat again. So I'm using a straight edge, and you can see that I'm high at the ends and low in the middle, so I'm going to have to use the block plane a little bit more. Now as far as these curves, well, I've got a rasp here, and I'm going to work the rasp And as I'm doing this, not only am I looking to make sure that the curve is nice and smooth, you can feel it as well. I'm going to wind up doing both, the convex and the concave curve, and I'm going to do this all the way down. I have the pieces for the back here on the bench, and the back is made out of some dimensional lumber. I have some 1x4 for the stiles. The top rail here is also a 1x4, and then the next one is actually a 1x12. Now you're looking at this and probably thinking that's too large, but take a look at it up here. what looks like the bottom rail for the upper unit and the rail for here is actually that 1x12. It's split by the shelf in the middle. And then for the bottom, we have, again, another 1x12, which gets split because of the seat. And then we finish up with a 1x8. Now, I mentioned that I'm using this dimensional lumber. You're probably thinking, well, couldn't I have took a sheet of plywood and cut that out? Well, the problem with that is once I drill my pilot holes, I'd have to use the jigsaw, and cutting straight long lines with the jigsaw is not an accurate way. And since that is going to be kind of the focal point, we want to make sure that those lines are straight. Okay, so I'm going to get the pocket hole jig out, and I'm going to put some pocket holes on this and put it together, and those will be on the actual back side of this when it's done, so you'll never see it. So the pocket screws are all done and it's attached, and I'm getting ready for the back panel. Now the back panel is some 1/4-inch beadboard, and I want this sitting flush with the rest of the back. In order to do that, I need to put a rabbet all the way around on this. I have the router set up with a 1/4-inch rabbet bit. And so that is a 1/4 inch from the edge of the tip to the bearing, and also a 1/4 inch down on the base plate. Now, whenever you're routing, in this case, I'm on the inside part of the frame, so I want to make sure that I go clockwise with it. I'm going to get set up, make the cut, and I'll show you then how we're going to fit the panel in. So the rabbet cut is now made, but I'm not quite done. I still have to go in and square up the corners before I can put the back panel in. Now let me show you something with the back panel here. Because this panel has our bead and groove on it, we want this all to be even spacing. So you'll notice that I have 15.5 inches here. But if I hold 15.5 up here, well, you can see I'm about in the middle of that. So I'm going to want to take a little off of this edge first, so I get some even spacing on both sides. After I get these cut to the right length, I'm going to set them in, and I'll glue it and put a couple little brads in place to hold it while it dries. Then I can bring the sides back in and start doing a little bit of assembly. The panels are cut, and I'm ready to set them in place. Now you'll probably notice that I have some tape on these here, and the reason for that is because it's painted in a two-tone color, it's going to be easier to paint it all and then put it together. But just for this video's sake, I'm putting them in now so you can see what it looks like. But they will get glued and nailed in place when it's all done. Okay, now it was important that I built the back first. Reason being is, if I cut some of these rails either a little short or left them a little long, Well, it's important that they match up exactly to the shelves. Now that the back is all together, I can measure this and I can cut my 3 shelf pieces, the top, the shelf, and the bottom. Now, the shelves and this back are going to get pocket holes on it. That way, when I put the sides on it, it'll be like sandwiched all together. So I'm going to do the holes for this next, and then we'll move to the next step. I have the top, the shelf, and the bottom here, and I'm getting ready to attach it to the side. Now, I've made this line on the back here. That's going to be actual space for the back. So my shelf will be flush to the front, and on this top one, I have the pocket screws facing outward. The reason for that is, since this is the very top, no one's going to see that up there. Now the shelf will be placed here, and I positioned the pocket screws to the far edge as possible because when the face frame goes on this, hopefully they'll be not so noticeable. And of course, the bottom will have those pocket holes facing the bottom. Now the back, I put those pocket holes along the stiles. So when this goes on, I can put the pocket holes down into it, and then I can put the other side on, pocket screw into that, and then I can move on to working on the face frame for it. So let me do that and I'll get back with you. I'm getting ready to make the face frame for our locker. Now the face frame is mostly going to be made up of some 1x2, and I've left it long here. So I'm going to line it up flush with this, and then down at this end I can take my pencil, mark it, and cut it. Now to get the rail, you could put this on there and try and measure the distance in the middle, but I find it easier to put both the stiles here. You can lay the rail on it, and I'll mark it down here. Now there's times to follow the plans, and there's times that it's better you don't. In this case, it's better you don't. Because if I made this back a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, well, if I went ahead and pre-cut all these face frame pieces ahead of time, they'd be the wrong size. Now, when is a good time to follow the plans? The placement of things. When I was putting the shelves on, I actually had the shelf too low. I had it down here. It looked good, but it presents a problem. If I had put the shelf where it originally was and put the face frame on, that would have made a lip on the top, the inside. It would have been hard to pull things off. This way the lip is on the bottom, making it nice and smooth. Okay, I'm going to finish marking these, and the same will be done to the bottom. And as far as construction, well, I'm going to pocket screw the rail into the stile, which will be on the back side, and then I'll glue and face nail it to the locker. So my face frames are pocket screwed together and now nailed onto the locker. Same thing at the bottom. Now, you might be wondering about the plywood here. Well, because this is getting painted, I have a great tip. You can put some glue on here. Put the glue on and cover up all of the exposed plywood. Now, when this dries, I'll do 2 more coats of it. And when I paint it, it's perfectly smooth. It's a great way of covering this up instead of trying to use like some edge banding on it. Now, while I still have this here on its back, I'm going to take the trim for the top and bottom, and I'm going to set it on here, mark it, cut it, and nail it on. Now, if I was going to do multiple lockers side by side, the trim would be one of the last things I want to do. Because if I had 4 lockers, I wouldn't want 4 little pieces. I want one long, nice consecutive piece. If you're doing just 1 locker, you might want to dress it up by having the molding return and go along the sides. All right, let me get these cut and nailed on, and we'll move on to the next step. I'm back to wanting to work on the seat. And let's take a look at the original one here a minute. The front is wider than the back. So it would seem logical that we would just notch that out. But, as told you before, cutting a long, straight, accurate line with the jigsaw is not easy to do. So I have another method. These are the boards that we had in the clamps that make up the seat. And I have it already cut to length for the width of the opening there. Now the seat is a lot wider, or deeper in this case. And the way we're going to address notching it is I'm going to take another board. I'm going to line this up, and I'll mark the bottom. I'm also going to mark these edges. Now I can cut that off, and then I can place this on here, line my pencil marks up with the edges, glue and clamp this together, and then all I have to do is cut it to the proper depth. So let me do that, we'll check back in, and I'll show you some of our final steps. So I've got the seat out of the clamps, and I've done a few things to it. On the outside edge, I put this round over on it. I did that with the router and a round over bit. But you don't necessarily have to have that. You could just do it with a block plane. I also, too, had to measure the distance from the back to this point here. And to give the seat some support, I put these cleats around it. Now this measurement, I went from this point back and then cut it off. And I did that with the jigsaw, and again, I cleaned it up with the block plane. I put a couple of pilot holes through it because I'm just going to use some nails and nail it in place. So essentially, our locker is all done. Now we have a little bit more to do before we're completely finished, and that is we're going to do some basket weaving. No, in all seriousness, I just purchased this basket at the store, but I have to admit it was hard to find a size that was good with my opening here. This one is actually, I think, a little too small, and the other ones were too big. So you might want to consider like making your own little crate to go down there. After you paint it, that's a good time to add the hardware for the hooks. And then you're just ready to set it in place. I think you'll find that you'll like this in your home, but I bet the kids will like it even better. I hope you enjoyed this project, and we'll see you next time right here on I Can Do That.